Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori and today we are going to be talking about The Last of Us. I want to give you guys my mini review of the show, but I more so want to talk about it as a video game to TV show adaptation. So The Last of Us, if you guys didn't know, it is one of my favorite video games of all time. I played it when it launched way back in 2013, binged the game, and over the years since then I've just returned to the game and the story many times, and so it's just something that is very near and dear to my heart. I was really anticipating this show, and I just want to talk about what it was like finally seeing something that I loved so much being translated to a different medium. I did love the show, spoiler alert, but there are some pros and cons that I had while watching all 9 episodes. So we're going to talk about that. And then at the very end, I do want to leave you guys with just a few post-apocalyptic recommendations that I think would be really fun to get into if you guys are looking for something else now that the show has ended. Post-apocalyptic is one of my favorite genres, so I do have an entire post-apocalyptic video for you guys to check out if you're interested in that too. But for this video, we're just going to leave it to just some rapid fire recommendations. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's get started. Last of Us came out back in 2013 for the PlayStation 3, and it was developed by Naughty Dog. And Naughty Dog is a first-party PlayStation developer, and Naughty Dog's games are always great. The gameplay's always solid, combat always solid. But over the years in the games industry, they've really built up a name for themselves, you know, being known for telling these incredible narrative-focused stories in gaming. And so when The Last of Us came along, that just kind of catapulted them, at least in my opinion, to this, you know, other level of storytelling in video games. And before anyone asks, yes, I also love Uncharted. No, I did not like the movie with Tom Holland. But let's get back to The Last of Us, because Uncharted, that's a whole other video. In The Last of Us, we're playing as our main character, Joel Miller, and it starts in 2013. I was gonna say present day, but back then present day. So it starts in 2013. Joel is coming home late from work. His daughter's sitting up waiting for him. And you know, a little bit of time skips, and then Sarah wakes up and she realizes she's alone. And from there, the world just goes, everything just goes to hell pretty much. The world turns to crap. I'm not gonna spoil what happens because, you know, if you're out there and you still want to play the game, if you have yet to watch the show, I just feel like that's an experience that you need to have for the first time by yourself. I just remember being traumatized holding that controller all those years ago. So anyways, and the game has a pretty sizable time skip after that. It goes forward 20 years, and now we see an entirely different Joel who is just a little bit colder. He's more hardened. He's a survivor now. But the events of the game really get into motion when Joel and his partner Tess agree to smuggle this 14-year-old girl, Ellie, across the country to a Firefly base. And the Fireflies are a rebel group in the game. And that right there becomes the meat of the game as we're following Joel and Ellie from all of these different locations across the country, from Boston to Pittsburgh to Jackson and eventually Utah, you know, where they're fighting for each other, defending each other, trying to survive, and trying to do so against this really harsh and unforgiving landscape. Then along the way, you start to see this really incredible bond form between the two of them. And what I love about the game is those small moments, because I mean, there's so much time where you're just traversing different areas, you're rummaging through warehouses, trying to find supplies. Joel keeps boosting up Ellie to get to these platforms that he can't reach, and they're working together throughout the entire game to get past these obstacles in the world. There are so many moments where they're just having conversation in game. So many moments where they're trading jokes back and forth. Moments where Joel is telling her about the world because everything is just so new, so fresh to Ellie. And it starts to bring out their characters a lot more. There are moments when like Joel and Ellie just high five each other, and you just feel it. It's so good. And it gives you such a strong sense of these characters outside of the cutscenes. So by the time you finally get to one and you get to this big explosive moment, especially towards the end when they are actually, you know, with Tommy and in Jackson, when you get to those big moments, they mean so much because of all of the little threads that got them to that point. I love the game so much. I could talk about it for hours, and I just remember, I'll speak for myself, but I think I can speak for all of the Last of Us fans. I was so worried and so skeptical about how that could potentially translate to a TV show. God forbid a film. I'm so happy that they decided not to do a movie. I just could not imagine everything that happens in this game taking place in the span of a 2-hour movie. I think a show was the perfect idea, and 9-episode runtime just, it made sense. So now let's actually get into the show and how I felt things translated from game to TV. I remember talking about this with my cousin. We were saying how HBO was the perfect place for The Last of Us. Like, I can't imagine this going to Netflix or being on Prime, Hulu, you know, one of the networks like ABC, things like that. I think HBO, actually, AMC could have done a good job. AMC, they're known for their, I think at least, they're known for their quality shows, quality storytelling, but they just came off The Walking Dead. And The Walking Dead is one of my favorite shows. So they just came out off The Walking Dead. They definitely did not need another, even though The Last of Us is different, they definitely didn't need another zombie show. I think HBO was the perfect home for this type of story, and in developing those characters and getting into those darker moments in the story, all of that, the moral ambiguity that we get into at the end. HBO handled that all really, really well. So that's the first thing that went right, is actually being on HBO. Also, what made it great was the fact that Neil Druckmann, who was the writer, the director for The Last of Us game, was heavily involved in this TV show. I feel like that should be like a light bulb to other streaming services, other networks. Like, if you're adapting anything, I think it helps to have the person who created the original content to be involved somehow. Just a theory. Yeah, Neil Druckmann being involved was perfect. Craig Mazin being involved. It was just, I think from there, The Last of Us fans got a lot of relief, and we could just kind of go into the first episode like, you know, Neil's behind this, things are gonna be okay. And that first episode came out the gate swinging. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it from beginning to end. I really did. The whole 9 episodes. I think 9 episodes was a really good length for this, because I'm thinking about the first time I ever played The Last of Us. I think I clocked in at around 14 hours by the time I had finished the game. 4 out of 14 hours, 3 of them were probably cutscenes. Taking 3 hours of cutscenes, and I mean, yes, the gameplay is infused into that as well, but taking 3 hours of cutscenes and stretching that into 9 episodes, I mean, that's pretty impressive. And also they get that stretch from incorporating those new, these brand new storylines actually into the TV show, which I thought was great. That's another thing that I loved so much about the show, is the changes that were made, they made sense for the story. There's in the game, when you do get to Bill, Frank's not in the game, so you just kind of hear about him and you learn how Frank actually did him pretty dirty. And so coming into the TV show, you know, I'm thinking we're just gonna get a whole Bill section pretty much like we did in the game, but instead we get this beautiful backstory that they created for Bill, while also incorporating Frank into the story in a way where he's not he's not trash, which was really nice to see. So I love that. I thought that was a change that just made sense, and an expansion on the story that made sense. One of my favorite changes though had to be the Henry and Sam, the whole Henry and Sam bit. Oh my God. That's a part in the game that I really loved. 2 characters that I just still think about all the time. The change that they made with Sam in the show by making him deaf, I was just like, what is going on? I'm in tears. That just, to me, created such a stronger dynamic between Henry and Sam that you didn't get to see in the game. Because yes, you know they were close in the game. Yes, you knew that Henry was going to do whatever it took to defend Sam. But seeing that adapted for TV and having this hearing barrier now between these 2 characters, it just, for me, it created a whole different dynamic, and I loved it. I knew it was coming, and I was glad that they did not change the ending of Henry and Sam the way that they changed the ending with Bill. I was still in tears. I knew it was coming, and I still sat on my couch and sobbed for about 10 minutes. It was heartbreaking. The young actor who plays Sam, I think, just completely nailed it. I cannot wait to see him in more projects in the future. And I believe the actor really is deaf in real life, and he was phenomenal bringing that character to life in a different way. And also the guy who plays Henry, I loved it. I loved it. All of the performances were spectacular. They were so good. They were so good. Just from episode 1, I feel like Nico Parker, she gave us such a good foundation. She was it. She was the glue for the first episode. And from there, it was just hit performance after hit performance. Seeing Tess in a new way, oh my God. I loved it. Marlene, the real Marlene, you guys, I know I'm just rambling. I'm just kind of rambling now, but I do love the fact that they incorporated the real actors from the game into the TV show. So we got the real Marlene, we got the real Tommy working with Kathleen, and then of course we get the real Joel and Ellie, Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson near the end. I was fangirling the whole time. It was so good. There was not a bad performance in this show. Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, they are Joel and Ellie. They were phenomenal. To me, they just captured the entire spirit, mindset, characteristics, personality, everything of those two characters, and did it all while playing off of each other and growing those characters together. And it happened in a way to me in the show that was just unforgettable. The second to last episode, episode 8, when they encounter David's crew and everything, it's slightly different. This is another change that I love. It's slightly different from how it happened in the game, because in the game, you know, yes, Ellie gets in that situation and she does have to try to evade David, and eventually she does end up with that physical confrontation with him. But in the game, Joel saves her. But in the show, I love the fact that they just let that scene play out without Joel. And the way that Bella Ramsey just went in on David it gave me chills, absolute chills. I had to watch the whole episode over again because I was like, this is unreal. What is going on right now? I loved it. I have seen some chatter online about how that whole section with David and his crew should have been spread out over 2 episodes, but I disagree. I don't think so. There were some moments throughout the show where I did feel like things were moving, you know, pretty quickly. I did say to myself one time, I was like, oh wow, they got here pretty fast. But you know, the game itself is very linear. Joel and Ellie, they quite literally just go from city to city, and the whole game just feels like boom, 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 with all of these story beats and gameplay beats happening pretty quickly. I do think that translated well to TV. I think 2 episodes with David's crew just would have felt like filler after a certain point. I do agree that there were some moments where I do feel like things were moving a little bit too quickly, and you could just feel like they were trying to, in the show, get to just get to certain moments. Especially, I think the scene when Joel and Ellie have that big confrontation in the bedroom. It's such a great moment in the game, and it was also a great moment in the show, but it just feels like they were trying to get there really quickly. And even when they were in that moment, in that scene, I was just like, oh no, slow down, like let that line land a little bit more. But I mean, overall, that's so minor. Like, I have no complaints. I love the whole thing. Just everything was spot on. The scenery was spot on throughout the entire show. The dialogue, they literally ripped so much dialogue straight from the game, to the point where I admit I was kind of annoying, but to the point where, you know, my mom and I, we would have like The Last of Us FaceTime dates on Sunday, and we would both be watching the episode premiere for the first time. But I'm so familiar with this game and with the story that I was literally saying lines before Joel or Ellie would say them, because I was just like, this is just like the game. This is great. And some people might complain about that, like, oh, it's too similar. I don't think any real Last of Us fan would be like, this is too similar to the game. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I had no problem with them just ripping lines and scenes from the game. I love that, and I love what they did with all of the shots. There's one shot in particular when they're leaving Tommy's in Jackson, and they're on that horse, and that sun is setting, and it's just like hitting both of them just right and making them look like silhouettes. The cinematographer for all 9 episodes, they were in their bag. The innards of all of the infected, just seeing them all over the walls. I loved it. I loved it. I had little complaints here and there, but really overall, I have no complaints. As a massive Last of Us game fan, I did not think I could love this story or these characters any more than I already did, and HBO proved me wrong. This was fantastic. So now that little rambly bit is over, I'm just gonna do some super rapid fire recommendations here of books that I think would make for great reads now that The Last of Us is over and you're looking for something else. I did mention I do have an entire video about post-apocalyptic books if you want to check that out. But these 5 right here, I just pulled these out because I think they, either the story reminds me a lot of The Last of Us, just, in terms of its vibes. The atmosphere of some of these books could really be appreciated if you enjoy The Last of Us. And also, I do have one in here that I think You might love if you really enjoyed the relationship or seeing the relationship between Henry and Sam play out on screen. So I'm gonna go through these really quickly. If you have watched my channel at all, you have seen all of these at one point or another, so you can just click off the video now because nothing is going to be new here. But first, I want to recommend The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. This is one of my favorite books of all time. We are following our main character Melanie, who is a zombie, and as we're following her throughout the story, we see the way that she views the world. So even though she's supposed to be this monster, she has this really beautiful, almost kind of innocent outlook on the world. And we also watch the relationship develop with her teacher and just see how that grows and changes over the course of the story. This is such a beautiful and raw story. I love it so much, and I cannot recommend this enough if you have not read it already. And then this one is not going to be a surprise to anybody at all, but if you like post-apocalyptic anything and you have not read The Road yet, you should probably do that. I have only read The Road once in my life. I read this years ago and I have never been able to return to this book. This was just completely an immersive and all-consuming reading experience. We're following an unnamed man and his son in the apocalypse, and the two of them are just fighting to survive. Not only is the father just protecting his son in this bleak world, but he's also trying to teach him how to survive no matter how brutal and how intense that may be. And just the way that this is written without, you know, traditional punctuation and dialogue tags and things like that, it just really puts you in the heart of this story, and you just feel like you're holding your breath the whole time. So I love The Road so much. And then I have one that I want to recommend just for the atmospheric vibes of it. This is quite different story-wise from, I mean, this has nothing in common story-wise with The Last of Us, but I think if you like the atmosphere of The Last of Us and you are more so interested in, you know, like the later half of the show, when we get to David's people and you just see how horrible people have gotten in the apocalypse, I think something like The Book of the Unnamed Midwife could really work for you. In this, we're following our main character who wakes up in the apocalypse, and it's this illness that's spread in this world that's killed women and children, and it makes it impossible for women to give birth. And so we're following this character who is traversing through this really dark, really dark and unforgiving landscape, trying to help other women. And so she's encountering all of these people who mean her some serious harm. To me, this is such an unforgettable reading experience, but just beware, this is pretty dark and pretty bleak, but I love this. I love the entire trilogy. So if you are interested, this is the Road to Nowhere trilogy by Meg Ellison, and I highly recommend it. And then I have another favorite of mine here. That is, of course, The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is just a phenomenal book. This is the first in the Broken Earth trilogy, and at the heart of this story we have a mother who is looking for her child across this world that is used to these post-apocalyptic events. They've experienced so many catastrophes throughout the years, but this mother will stop at nothing to find and protect her child. And I think if, you know, Joel's character resonates with you in The Last of Us and seeing the relationship that he has, not only with his daughter Sarah, but also the one that starts to develop with Ellie, you could really appreciate a book like this. But there's a lot more than that to The Fifth Season, so this is just one you need to read anyway. This is so great. I think this is a modern, just a modern fantasy classic, a modern post-apocalyptic classic, and cannot recommend this one enough. And then last but not least, this is one that I think could work for you if you really love the relationship between Sam and Henry in The Last of Us. Again, this one is not zombies, but this is City of Savages by Lee Kelly. And at the heart of the story, we have two sisters in post-apocalyptic Manhattan who will quite literally do anything for each other in order to survive. And we're following them as they are discovering their mother's journal entries, her diary entries from before the world fell apart. And so they're learning about their mother in this new way that they've never experienced before. And at the same time, they are trying to look out for each other, take care of each other. And pretty soon someone comes along though in this little camp that they have in Manhattan and changes everything that they know about the world. But I loved it so much. This is still a story that I think about a lot. I love the relationship that these two sisters have, but not only that, the one that they have with their mother I think is so incredibly beautiful. So again, you get that parent-child relationship in a post-apocalyptic setting, which I think could work for some readers. So that is it from you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and Appreciate you listening to my rambles about how much I love The Last of Us, but let me know if you have played the game or watched the show, or if you're interested in doing either. I want to hear about it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.